Welcome to my bookshelf tour. And welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you are new. My name is Freya. Today I am finally bringing you a very long awaited bookshelf tour. This is probably one of my most requested videos, so I'm finally doing it and I hope you enjoy. I am primarily a fantasy reader, so a lot of my shelves are full of fantasy. I have two bookshelves here. This bookshelf has a few of my boyfriend's books as well as mine. This bookshelf is just all my books. As you will see, they are very much overflowing. I live in an apartment and I don't have like an endless amount of space to put these. However, I do have like a second bookshelf back at my parents' house that is also filled with a lot of fantasy books, but much more like YA fantasy books like my Harry Potter series, or my Cassandra Clare collection, The Land of Stories, Heroes of Olympus, all that fun stuff. All the kind of stuff that got me into reading. So if you want a tour of that, at some point in the future, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that when I'm back at my parents' house. Today we're obviously focusing on these bookshelves. So without further ado, I think we should get started. We will start with this bookshelf and start at the top, of course. I'll also show you all the kind of little things on my bookshelves. My bookshelves are pretty much organized as by genre and aesthetics. So at the top we kind of have all of like my taller fantasy books and fantasy series, as well as the Grishaverse by Leigh Bardugo, which is like my everything. I love them. Fourth Wing and Iron Flame paperbacks up here. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, The Jazzed Air, A Winter's Promise, which is like one of my favorite fantasy romance series. They are absolutely stunning and just such beautiful, beautiful books. Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare, which is her newest release, which is amazing. And then of course the Grishaverse series. So that includes the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Six of Crows duology, and I'll move my little plant here, and the King of Scars duology. These books are also like absolutely stunning. I love these books like with my entire heart. They're my I love this series. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend. Moving down to the second shelf, again this is fantasy. And I need to address the elephant in the room. This is my very first Jellycat. She is making an appearance on the bookshelf. She's a little sloth, but I'll take her off so I can show you properly. We have Powerless by Lauren Roberts, Dance of Thieves duology, which is like one of my favorite duologies. The Once Upon a Broken Heart series. This is a trilogy and my editions of them are just the typical Australian or UK editions. They're paperback. As you can see, I love this series. I've annotated it like crazy. If you can't tell already, this is kind of my Stephanie Garber shrine. I then have the Caraval trilogy, and these are the US hardcover editions because I think they are absolutely stunning. I love, love, love the US editions of these. We then have the Divine Rivals duology, a bit of a Cassara Broadbent area with Daughter of No Worlds and Serpent and the Wings of Night, and then the Darkest Shade of Magic trilogy. These are kind of some of the books that I just want on display and that I always find myself reaching to, so I kind of just keep them up here. They're also some of my like absolute favorites, like Stephanie Garber, one of my favorite authors ever, and I just find myself like constantly reaching to them when I need to do book recs, and they're just some of my favorites, so they stay on this shelf. Moving down to the first kind of romance shelf I have talked about. So these are my romance favorites. These are like my all-time favorite. I will do anything for them. They are my ride or die romance series. So starting off with the Magnolia Park series, I have the traditional covers of the Magnolia Park series, which I am so grateful for. Of course, they have their rightful place on this shelf. I then have the Boys of Tottenham series, which is my favorite series ever. I have the traditionally published versions, so Binding 13, Keeping 13, Saving 6 and Redeeming 6, and then I also, because I got into the series before it was traditionally published, I have the indie editions of Binding and Keeping 13. I read these before obviously they were published, and I'm actually so glad I have these. Like, these are super hard obviously to come by now because they were independently published. Also up here I have Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. I haven't actually read this yet. It is very new to my collection and I just kind of fit there for now. I also know that it's a sports romance, so it just kind of felt right. I then have a little bit of Emily Henry. So I have Happy Place, Book Lovers, Beach Read. These, I love Emily Henry. And then I have two Ali Hazelwood books, Love Theoretically and Bride. This is her newest release and I'm lucky enough to have the ARC edition of it. This is absolutely stunning and it is a hardback ARC. I love it so much. Also an incredible book. Just quickly, this is my little Sarah J Maas area because I cannot fit them on my bookshelves at the moment. So this kind of just sits here right next to all my vinyls and my records. So I just have the Throne of Glass series and then the Crescent City series. Still for some reason do not have the ACOTAR series in my collection. I don't know why. Moving on to my next fantasy shelf. This is definitely the most like packed shelf. This is just all of my fantasy and high fantasy, fantasy romance, romance. I also have a lot of like my fantasy arcs on here. So over here we start off with Lord of the Rings by J.R. Tolkien, like some classics, some Brandon Sanderson, Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I then kind of just have this random stack that are all just kind of favorites, like Sabriel, One Dark Window, Red Rising, I know that's sci-fi, Shadow of the Gods, Obsidian Tower, River Enchanted, The Book of Doors, Scarlet Veil, and Priory of the Orange Tree. The Book of Doors is actually an arc as well. I then have Akane just kind of sitting up here because I only recently read it and couldn't really find a proper spot for her, so she's just sitting there. I then have Garth Nix, Terrasil and Eleanor, and this book is actually signed by Garth Nix. This is like my only signed book I own. I then have Olivia Blake's Master of Death, Dragon Rider, which is also an arc. It is just absolutely stunning. A River of Golden Bones, Feybound, The Sanctuary of the Shadow, and The Crimson Moth. The Crimson Moth is also an arc. So down here we just have The Assassin's Apprentice, Renegades, House of Beating Wings, Pendragon Wit, Girl Goddess Queen, Night Angel Nemesis, and Chain of Thorns. These are mainly all fantasy, and then we have a few thrillers over here. So then we've got Study in Drowning, Whisper, Raven Boys, The Name of the Wind, one of my all-time favourite fantasies, Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, Assistant to the Villain, A Court of Tangled Threads, House in the Cerulean Sea, and then we have 3 thrillers, so The Paris Apartment, None Shall Sleep, and Bright Young Women. This is actually like a true crime fiction. Moving on to the next shelf. First of all, up the top, I just kind of have little things like we have like a salt crystal lamp, my little diffuser, some little propagations I'm doing, and then this is my boyfriend's Lego bonsai. And then we have a little Totoro who just sits on the bookcase. So these are kind of my boyfriend's books. These are definitely more my boyfriend's books than mine, at least the top shelf is. That's pretty much it. So I'm just going to go very quickly over them. We have a few classics on this shelf and some Japanese authors and some contemporary fiction. We have Before the Coffee Gets Cold kind of series, which are just wonderful series. The Remains of the Day and Clara and the Sun. Then we have a few more poetry books, some Murakami books. This book I actually bought for Austin. It's like a limited edition, special edition of Murakami's Norwegian Wood, which is like one of his favorite authors. Bookish girls give good gifts, what can I say? We have some more classics like Catch-22, Lord of the Flies, The Murder on the Orient Express, and then we have Penguin classics over here, so like Great Gatsby, a lot of Fitzgerald. Down here is my romance and contemporary fiction shelf. So starting over here we have Dolly Alderton's Good Material. I was kindly sent that by Penguin and I cannot wait to read it. We then have Taylor Jenkins Reid collection. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. She is probably like my favorite romance author. I think she is incredible. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was like the book that got me back into reading a while ago. Not that I ever kind of stopped reading, but like during year 12 I just didn't have a lot of time for it, but after reading that book like I made time for it. So we have all of her books here. So Kari Santo is back, Malibu Rising, One True Loves, After I Do, Daisy Jones, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, Maybe in Another Life, and Forever Interrupted. I then have a few romance books all kind of stacked up because that's easiest and it fits them all. I am missing Wildfire because I'm currently reading it. We have Lucy Score, the Knockabout series, so Things We Never Got Over, Things We Hide from the Light, and Things We Left Behind. We then have the first 3 books in the Chestnut Springs series, which is all I've read so far, but again, love it. This is a cowboy romance series. We are set in a ranch in Canada. Amazing. So we have Flawless, Heartless, and Powerless. We then have Icebreaker by Hannah Grace and Wildfire by Hannah Grace also goes there. And Love Me Do by Lindsay Kelk. This is also an arc I kindly got sent, so it looks obviously a bit different to the actual one. Mariana Zapata, the Queen of Slow Burns. This one is actually, I think, her traditionally published version as well. It's kind of an awkward size though, and very, very heavy compared to her others. So that's The Wall of Winnipeg and Me and all here. We then have The 7 Year Slip, some Tessa Bailey. I was also kindly sent this one. I think it comes out this month, which is very, very exciting. Red, White and Royal Blue, Addicted to You. And then we have The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, both by Gabrielle Zevin. And then we have A Little Life. I read recently and it just absolutely broke me, as you can see by the annotations. Now for the final shelf, I probably won't go into detail because it is kind of a mess. I'm just gonna give you an overview because we've got some thrillers, we've got some contemporary fiction, we've got plays, we've got poetry. They're all there because they all have a similar kind of color scheme and I put them there for the vibes and they don't really fit into another category. So that's what the bottom shelf is. The bottom shelf, you'll see what I mean. We have some classics like Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, one of my all-time favorites. And then we also have a random anime, we have some plays, some like Crime and Punishment, some more classics. We have a kind of Jules Verne collection, they're my boyfriend's, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a favorite. it. And then a few kind of thrillers here and literary fiction. But yes, that is the bottom shelf. But that is my bookshelf. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to see you here again. Let me know if you want another bookshelf tour. I'm more than happy to do so. Thank you so much for being here. It means so much to me, and I'll see you in my next video.